Hi everyone, welcome back. And I'm Tyler, the Bulletproof Pastor. Bulletproof not because I'm so great, but because I wear God's armor that you can wear also. God's armor is bulletproof, and what's under it. Hi everyone, welcome back. Oops, hang on. And yeah, you get God's armor, you can be bulletproof too. Let's say good morning. Danny Thrive was first in. Janine, good morning. Sally H, Pepper Leah, and others as we get going. It says there's a whole lot more people in there than are signing into chat. But like and subscribe. Love to have you in here. And that helps the numbers good. It's all a numbers game. Yeah, if you subscribe and hit the bell icon, then you can be ignored by YouTube and not notified of our channel as well. Seems that's going around a bit, don't you think? So Terry and I had a really good day yesterday. We just spent the whole day together. We did things that old people do. Yeah, we went to thrift stores, Goodwills, Dollar Trees, and then I took her out to dinner, and then we came home and fed the goats again. So it was a good day. It was a good day spending time together. We don't need to really have big celebrations because every day is a celebration. I just love that woman, and I just like being with her. She's kind of fun to be around. And after 46 years, we are now into our 47th year. Just think, we're heading towards 50. Do you think we'll make it? You know, there is doubt. The way this world is going, we may all be in heaven at that time. So we just don't know what 3 years is going to bring. And the direction it's going and how quickly things are turning really south. Yeah, I wouldn't, it may not be time to buy too many green bananas. Things aren't going too good. So, I mean, just turn the clock back in your memory of what things were like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And the things that are commonplace today were unthinkable then. And things are getting bad and they're accelerating. It's like going over the edge of the roller coaster and you're heading towards the bottom and all you're doing is picking up speed and there's no tracks down there. So it's a crash coming. Kathy, oh, good morning. Cheryl, good morning. Tanya, good morning. Glad you guys been here. Glad you guys got in the door. Oh no, Cheryl. Evacuation alert from wildfires. Yeah, that's not so good. Where are you, Cheryl? Are you up in Canada? I don't know where the fires are, but it's either Canada or California. Both of those are bad places. Very, very common areas for very impacting wildfires or forest fires. Anyway, I see northern BC. I can barely read it through that heart logo. I don't know why that thing is there. It kind of messes up all of the chats until they get moved up a little bit. But yeah, I know some people that are up there, have a bunch of girls, and they've been homesteading for off-grid up there in northern British Columbia and absolutely love it. Hope their place is okay. Things are getting crazy all over the world. Hey, we are in the book of Acts, chapter 27. We're going to complete 27, Lord willing, today. And then we only have one more chapter, and that closes the book of Acts. And we will go back to our normal programming. So, okay, let's take a look. We are in... Let's back up a little bit. Let's start in verse 10 and move forward from there, because that'll kind of set the context for today's study. Paul is speaking to them and said, unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading of the ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul. Now, the master and owner of the ship is the one who's got, wait a minute, I got cargo here to deliver. I need to get it to where I can make the most money. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, and the more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phoenice, and there to winter, which is a haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. So, hey, look, we're talking about podunk country village in the middle of nowhere that it would be a safe place to be, but hey, if we just make it a little further, we can go to Phoenice. That's the party city. That's like, hey, we can go to Las Vegas and spend the winter there. You know, a paid vacation in Las Vegas. You get it? This is kind of the motivation of what was pushing them to go here. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, what was their purpose? Was their purpose to protect the ship and to make it through the difficult times? Or was their purpose to go party? I think the latter was more true. Loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete, meaning they're, close by the land. But not long after, there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. Hoo boy, this is a major hurricane, a major cyclone, if you will. So, different parts of the world, storms, these circular storms are called different things. If they are spawned in the Atlantic, they're called hurricanes. If they're in the Indian Ocean, I believe that makes them a tempest. I'm not sure. And maybe a tempest is in the Mediterranean. I don't remember. And then there are cyclones and typhoons. I do know that wherever the storm that hit us on Guam originated, it was called a typhoon, and it was a superclass typhoon. We were on land, so we, obviously not moving, and it took 4 days for that typhoon to pass over us, and it was a powerful typhoon. We're going to look at something here on the amount of time that the ship was involved in this, and it's going to be a whopper. It was called Euroclydon. Verse 15, and when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. In other words, you could put out a storm sail, which is a rather stiff sail up forward, way forward of the boat, and pretty much what it does is it keeps you pointed in one direction and keeps you a little bit of motion. It's not a very big sail, but there's a huge wind on it, so it actually moves the boat fairly well. And if the boat isn't moving, your rudder is useless. You can't steer. And so a storm sail will at least give you some steering in a sailboat. And running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat. When you're saying the boat, you're talking about a small boat, not the ship. We have a ship, and a ship has boats, kind of like an ocean liner is a ship, but it carries many lifeboats. So the boats are small. In a large fishing vessel, you have the ship that is the fishing boat, maybe the processor ship, and then you have smaller boats that are the actual skiffs that go out and tend the nets and things like that. In a ship of this size, they would have small boats that would get them from where they could anchor the ship, and then get in a dinghy or a smaller boat to make it to shore. So when you're talking two things here when you talk boat versus ship. which when they had taken up, they used helps undergirding the ship. So they used the little boat as a tender to get around and tend to the ship and sort of put things under it to hold it upright, because probably they were real close to land and they had to shore it up. And fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, they struck sail and so were driven. And we being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. And the third day we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. The tackling would be the ropes and pulleys, and pretty much they'd given up hope of being able to save the ship. They were throwing this stuff out to lighten the boat so that they wouldn't run aground or run afoul that way. And when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. So they're in a place of desperation. Now, this next verse is something pretty interesting of Paul's demeanor and manner. It's probably not the way we would conduct things. We would probably say, I told you so, you should have listened to me. Well, he says that, but he just briefly goes over that and then dives into the hope rather than, thumping his chest or anything. He didn't waste his message by nagging truth to them. That truth was real obvious and didn't need to be drummed home. But after long abstinence, Paul has kept himself quiet during all of this. He lent himself to helping them without saying a word about, you should have listened to me, I told you this would happen. He didn't do that. He abstained. And what did he do? He rolled up his sleeves and helped them through the trouble. Paul stood forth in the midst of them after a long abstinence, remember, hadn't said a word in all this time. He says, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you. So he just briefly said, you should have listened to me, but I'm exhorting you now. I'm telling you some good things. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. He's saying something profound and absolute that none of these men had any real confidence in of themselves. Up to this point, they had lost all hope of surviving this storm. They were expecting to be killed or drowned or both, drowned and killed. All of the things that could be bad, they expected at this point. They had given up hope. They were in a place of despair. And Paul says, profoundly, he was the one, by the way, who told them that this was going to happen. Now they believe him because it happened just like he said. And now he's saying something even more profound. He's saying that of all of the people on the ship, and we're not talking about a few people either. We're going to see the number on this ship was huge. There was a lot of people a lot of souls on board. And he said, not one of you are going to perish. The only thing that's going to be lost is the ship. How can the ship be a total loss and yet all of its passengers saved? That's pretty profound. That's really reaching out there. Verse 23, this is why Paul was able to say this. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am. I belong to God. I am God's servant, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Paul, don't you remember? You're a prisoner, and basically you are the prisoner of this centurion and leader here. And you belong to him. He said, no, all of you on board this ship belong to me. God gave you to me. That's pretty profound. That's amazing. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Wow. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. But when the 14th night was come, whoa, 14th night? Now, how do you count 14 nights? The superclass typhoon that I was involved in was just 4 days. So where were they counting the 14th night? This could be perhaps the 14th night of their journey, 14th night since they set sail. So that would be 2 weeks going. Remember, they started when the soft winds blew, or when the winds blew softly, and they began their journey. And then the wind started picking up and getting bad. And I remember when we had the typhoon coming, the seas started getting a little stormy and the waves started getting big many days before the storm actually hit. But if you're out there in a boat on the seas, the stormy seas hit you pretty quick before the big winds do. So it would be quite a bit of days before, but 14 days, that's a lot. I think maybe they were counting since they'd left on the beginning of their journey. Either that, or it could be that being in that storm, it's a circular storm. That boat could have been caught in the wind and driven, and it would follow the winds wherever the wind went, which would be circular. So they could have been kind of caught in the storm and moving with the storm as the storm goes. So I don't know. When I was in the storm, I was on a rock island. The wind didn't blow the island anywhere. But if you're in a ship, yeah, that ship would be kind of caught in the storm and carried with it wherever it's going. I don't know. I can't answer that, but I don't think we're talking about a storm that took 14 days to pass over a piece of land. But it was a big storm. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded and found it 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little further, they sounded again and found it 15 fathoms. So the bottom's coming up. It's getting more shallow. Then, fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. 4 anchors out of the stern of a boat is kind of typical for a storm. Even the small cruiser boats that I know of, that I follow, they will often set at least 2 anchors off their stern, or off, to anchor their boat if it's going to be stormy weather. And I have heard of them casting off anchors off of the stern and another one off the bow, and they will throw a lot of anchors out. This idea that, oh boy, I'll carry an anchor in my boat. Most fishing boats don't even have an anchor. But if you're a big commercial ship, you have many anchors and you use them. Then fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day, because it's dark, and they're hoping that, oh man, let me see some daylight. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, the crew, they were getting ready to bail out of the ship in the storm and make for shore, when they let down the boat into the sea under color as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, meaning out of the front. Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. Now, these are not the soldiers. These are the ship's crew. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, this day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore, I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health. For there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then were they all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. I have been in, let's put it, interesting times where eating was never at the forethought of what to do. Hunger just was past. I was way too busy dealing with extreme adrenaline producing activities to tend to eating. And when somebody finally said, hey, look, guys, we need to eat something. It's been a while. If you have been running on that adrenaline for so long, and your body is hungry, regardless of how you feel about it, and you begin to eat, your tummy turns into a happy place, and your whole countenance lifts as that food enters your body. And the result of that is just an amazing transformation. It's a physiological burst of attitude that changes. You know, it is so important to keep your nutrition up and to eat something, even if you don't feel like it, eat something. And here, same thing. They were all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And we were all in the ship. Now, here's the number of people in this ship. Don't ever think that these ships that we hear about in the Bible are tiny little boats. We have all been done great disservice by the coloring books in Sunday school showing Jesus and the disciples in a little rowboat with a stick up there and a bed sheet called a sail in the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is a terribly dangerous body of water. And because of the geography of the area, the winds come through there and storms, violent storms, pop up real suddenly. And you just don't go out there in the Sea of Galilee in a little boat. It's got to be a big boat. And even the hints that we have in Scripture about the disciples took ship. They went on board a ship. There are a lot of large boats, large vessels, if you will, that cross that sea, and they have small boats on them. I mean, we're not talking a little bitty, we're not talking a boat, we're talking a ship, a big ship, big by our standards. And this is how they traveled. Jesus asleep in the stern of the boat. Can you imagine Jesus in a little bitty rowboat with a bedsheet sail, and he's asleep in the stern of the boat, having all the rain fall on him and the waves crashing over and splashing him? Be like somebody standing back with a bucket of water, throwing buckets of water at you, and Jesus stays asleep in the back of the boat. If you take those Sunday school cartoons and think that's the kind of boat they were in, it makes the story rather ridiculous, doesn't it? Let's take a look at this ship, which was a typical commercial ship of the day. And we were in the ship 216 souls. 276 people were on board that ship. That's not a little boat. This is a big ship. And this is a cargo ship that was not overloaded. 276 souls on board this ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. I believe this ship was carrying a cargo of wheat. They've already thrown out all the tackling, all the extra rigging they had to lighten the ship. Now they're throwing out the cargo. And if it's a ship that's as big as 276 people on board, it took them all to get busy and unload this cargo of this ship. And when it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea and loosed the rudder bands. Rudder bands are the things that hold the rudder still so that it doesn't get knocked around in the sea, in the waves, and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind and made toward shore. And falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. Now, this next verse, we're seeing what is standard operating procedure for Roman soldiers. Remember, Roman soldiers, when they are entrusted with a prisoner, their life will take the place of the prisoner if the prisoner escapes. If they allow that prisoner to escape, or if anything happens because of their negligence and the prisoner escapes, the soldier takes the prisoner's place. He goes to prison, he's executed, whatever the crime was of that prisoner, the soldier now has to bear it. And the soldiers' counsel, how they were trained, was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land. And the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. Now tomorrow we're going to see the close of this. And it's a pretty amazing finish to the book of Acts. But what a thrilling thing. Paul is just saved by the skin of his teeth in a terrible shipwreck. God has a purpose in everything. God has his way in the storm, right? Let me catch. Yeah, I told you so. It's not very endearing or constructive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're in a world today where we seem to have no consequences. And we also are in a world that does not, it seems to believe that everybody's good. Everybody deserves a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. And there is a complete denial in our justice system to recognize that there is a thing called evil and that there are people that are totally given to evil and that these evil people need to be removed from our society. That when a person has given themselves over to evil, they need to be dealt with as a capital crime. I was just reading about a man who was, he was wicked to the nth degree. He was into Satanism. He was into, lots and lots of evil. And he was found guilty of murdering several people. And he would just come across people camping out. And he would sit down and talk with them for a while. And then finally he would get up and pull out a gun and shoot them. And this guy was evil. And the first time he did this, he tried to say it was self-defense. There was absolutely no evidence of that. And they still found him guilty of killing these two guys. And so he got 15 years in the penitentiary. So he began to behave as a model prisoner, and they let him out in just like 5 years. And then he kind of behaved himself, to the best of anybody's knowledge, for a number of years, and then went back to his ways and murdered 2 more men, or tried to murder 2 more men. He was found guilty the second time, and he was finally executed. But this was 30 years ago. Today, man, there is a current case where this person has a string of murders that they orchestrated and organized. Their fingerprints were found on murder scene evidence. This lady murdered her own children, husband, spouses, all these people. I mean, lots of people. And yet they did plea bargaining so that capital punishment was removed from the possibilities. They had her cold. There was absolutely no defense. And yet they did a plea bargain? This is the world we're in, folks. Nobody is held accountable for their actions and for their sins. And the fact that someone can be just pure evil is completely removed from our thinking. And so nobody's ever executed. Nobody's ever, they said, well, how do you rehabilitate somebody who's executed? That's not the purpose. It's punishment. But more than that, it's example. And when states have returned capital punishment to their penal system, then the violent crime goes down. Who'd have thunk it? This is accountability. And when you're held accountable for your actions, and you're held to a level of justice that will be exacted on behalf of the victims, then crime goes down. When you take that away, crime just jumps exponentially. Take a look at what's happening in the Pacific Northwest, all the way from Seattle down through Oregon. They stopped prosecuting theft under $1,000. They're not going to track them down. They're not going to charge them. They will not prosecute. And now we have stores that are packing up and leaving cities because of just out of control, unbridled shoplifting, brazen. They show these people walking out the doors with armloads of stuff, and the security people can't even stop them. And sometimes it's a mass group of people that just come in and raid the place and run out the doors, and they know that most of them are going to get away because there's only one security person. And it doesn't even do any good to have them on video because the police won't even prosecute. Problem? Is the world going bad? Sure is. We're not going to be long here, folks. There is evil, and evil is getting unbridled right now. Yeah, no responsibility for actions. Yeah, the relationships between family and friends is also just as broke. All right. Well, let's close in prayer. We've got one more day. This is exciting to see the close of the book of Acts. And there's an epitaph here. The last chapter is not just a happily ever after ending. There's a lot packed in this last chapter. So we'll take a look at that, Lord willing, starting tomorrow. Father, we thank you for the hope that we have, the promise that we have of life forevermore in your presence. God, we ask for your blessing. Guide us as we go. Bring us back again. Help us, Lord, to demonstrate the love of Christ to everyone we meet. Help us to be a difference and to make a difference. And Lord, we thank you. In Jesus' sweet name, amen. God bless you all, and I'll see you tomorrow.